We're going to start with the check-in question. Good morning, Abigail. The check-in question is, what is one strong inference you made while reading Act 1 of Pygmalion? Be ready to provide evidence if you are called on. Good morning, Esaias. Good morning, Elizabeth. So for those of you who just entered the chat, I'm going to share my screen and put the check-in question on my screen. We are answering the question, what is one strong inference you've made while reading Act 1 of Pygmalion? Be ready to support your inference with a piece of evidence. Remember that an inference is something that is not explicitly said. It doesn't have to be a message, it's just anything about the characters that you are making an educated guess about. You've got 2 minutes on the clock. This should be easy and quick. What is a strong inference you have made while reading Act 1 of Pygmalion? Remember, actively participating in this chat is how you earn attendance credit for the meet. So I see Carter and Jaylene have both already responded. Esaias has also responded. I'm putting the check-in question is both in the chat and it's on my screen. Take 1 more minute to write in your inference. I'm going to stop sharing so I can look at people's inferences. Check-in question has been put in the chat again. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to get started. I put in a check-in question. The check-in question was, what is one strong inference you've made while reading Act 1 of Pygmalion? So I want to be really clear here because we're starting to confuse the idea of an inference from the idea of a thematic statement. So I'm going to write this in the chat so you see it. A thematic statement is a universal message. An inference is an educated guess about specifically the characters and the plot of the text. So let me be really clear. We as a class, as in all of the 7th grade, is struggling with thematic statements. This is so normal. Thematic statements are hard, especially remembering the difference between a thematic statement, the difference between a inference, and the difference between a thematic topic. Those 3 things are all different things, and it's very normal to confuse what they are. So a thematic statement, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, a thematic statement is a universal message. An inference is specific about this text. So if you all want to look at Salise's comment from 904, Salise says the note taker is paying attention and studying the people's language to see where they are from. So it's never explicitly said that the note taker is paying attention to how people talk. That's never said. But we see that at the end of Act 1, when he starts to be able to say, well, the flower girl's from here, and the mother is from here, and I study linguistics, right? Then we're able to go, oh, at the beginning of the act, what he was doing was studying how the people talked, not taking down the flower girl's actions. So Salise's inference is strong because it's specific to the play, it's specific to the plot and the characters. This is different from a thematic statement, which is universal message. So Isis says there are different classes in this play as shown from the interaction with the flower girl and the note taker. The note taker is looking down at the flower girl because of how she spoke and the lifestyle she was living. The flower girl is lower class and the note taker is higher class. Isis, this is such a strong inference. Nowhere does the book say the flower girl is poor and the note taker is rich. That doesn't happen, right? But Isis has been able to put together, by the way that they describe the flower girl's clothes, by the fact that she's selling flowers and begging for money so she can have somewhere to sleep, and the fact that the note taker has a degree in linguistics, has traveled, has nice boots, right? You can all, and then the way that they interact with each other and the difference in language all point us to there's lower class and there's upper class, and these 2 people are interacting in this. Isis, really strong inference. I'm going to actually take a screenshot of that so I can make sure to post it. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to present my screen. I've got a bit of a mini lesson today, just to review these different topics, and then we're going to have questions throughout. So again, the difference between a thematic topic and a thematic statement. A thematic topic is just one word or phrase that describes a main idea or topic in the text. A thematic statement is based on the thematic topic. It's a complete sentence that describes a universal message. So I was talking to Mr. McCabe yesterday, and something that he said might be helpful is explicitly saying what a thematic statement is not. So a thematic statement is a complete sentence, and it is a universal message. What it is not is a word or phrase. It is not talking about specific characters in a text, and it is not including any of these words. So I'm going to pause there. If you understand what a thematic statement is, put all good in the meat. If you are still confused about what a thematic statement is, put confused in the meat. There are 36 people in this meet. I should have 36 responses. Okay, I've got about 15 people saying all good. I've got 2 confused. I need everyone responding so I know where we're at. Sadia or Richard, if you have a specific question that you can ask, can you write that in the chat? Otherwise, I'll go through it and we're going to do an example, and hopefully that will help your confusion. But if you have a question, I want to make sure I answer your specific question. So I'm still waiting for people to respond to this question. Kwame, such a good question. So Kwame asks, a thematic statement is relatable to a theme. So this gets a little bit confusing because many teachers don't teach this right. A thematic topic is a thematic topic. A thematic statement is also sometimes just called a theme. And that gets really confusing. So theme equals thematic statement. So whenever you see theme, you should be thinking universal message, full sentence. Is that helpful, Kwame? So I'm going to go through an example. Well, I'm going to review quote sandwich, and then we're going to do an example that is using a quote sandwich and we're using a thematic statement. So again, just a reminder, the purpose of a quote sandwich is just to smooth the transition between the claim and the evidence. So I'm going to put this structure in our support, but really this is just the structure, an outline of a short response. You'll put your claim, you'll introduce your evidence, you'll put your evidence, you'll analyze your evidence. Here, let me make that clearer. Analyze evidence. And then you'll repeat steps 2 through 4 for the second piece of evidence. So I'm going to go through an example based on the short response from 2 days ago, which a lot of people struggled with. So determine a theme, which this means, right? This is also thematic statement, right? It's both of those things of Act 1 based on the thematic topic, culture, which means that I need to be thinking about a thematic statement that focuses on culture. So remember, culture can be language, can be location, can be traditions, can be music or food, etc., right? There are lots of things that fall under culture. The one that I want to focus on, because there's the most evidence about it, is language. So for culture, the thematic topic, I have to think about what is the universal message regarding culture, or more specifically language. So how I would respond is, first I need to write my claim that clearly answers this question. So one thematic statement based on Act 1 of Pygmalion Pygmalion is specifically focuses on language. So this is my introduction sentence. Some of you may provide this, some of you may not. For me, an introduction sentence, which is not required to be clear, just helps me organize my thoughts before I put the theme is. The theme, people are often treated differently because of how they speak. Is clearly shown throughout Act 1 of Pygmalion. So what I would say is this sentence is unnecessary. It doesn't really say much. For me, it helped me get my brain going, but I don't actually need it. I can start right there. So this is my step 1, and I'm going to number these steps just so you can see an example of how these steps are broken up. So I start with step 1. My step 2 is introducing my evidence. This means I show that I understand the text and that I can accurately explain where the quote is coming from. So first I need to think about my quote. And so what I'm thinking about for my quote is specifically when the note taker is talking to the flower girl. And he says, I have it right here. Oh, I did have it. I lost track of it. Hold on. Sorry, y'all. Oh, I got it. Haha. Note taker. So the note taker says, there. Who's hurting you, you silly girl? What do you take me for? And then he says, do I look like a policeman? And then he goes on and he says, trying to find the sentence that I really want. Where does he say exactly? Proper writing, chair of captain. Ah, here we go. Never you mind, they did, to the girl. How do you come to be up so far east? You were born in Listen Grove, right? So this is him specifically saying, that doesn't answer my claim. So I just got carried away. Ready? So I have to stay focused and make sure that my evidence, this is actually really good because sometimes I make the same mistakes you all make. So my theme is people are treated differently because of how they speak. So I'm going to underline that so I don't get confused. I'm also going to move down to my evidence. I can always introduce my evidence after. So the evidence I really want to do is saying there. Who's hurting you, you silly girl? Right? This is the note taker who says this. The taker. So now I need to introduce this text. So what's happening before? She's crying because she thinks that she's going to get in trouble with the police. So in Act 1, the flower girl is upset because she thinks she is going to get in trouble. She's upset and crying because she thinks she's going to get in trouble by the police. But the note, by the note taker, who she thinks is the police, right? So then I can say in the text, the note taker, which this doesn't need to be in caps anymore, note taker says, there, who's hurting you, you silly girl, right? And then I can put my analysis. By calling the flower girl a silly girl, the note taker is speaking down to her, which we find, right? So he's speaking down to her. So let's look at this, and this is just the first half of my quote sandwich. So if you notice, the quote sandwiches are much longer because we're adding a sentence. That's totally okay. So let's put it all together. The theme, people are often treated differently because of how they speak, is clearly shown throughout Act 1 of Pygmalion. I answered my question clearly. In Act 1, the flower girl is upset and crying because she thinks she is going to get in trouble by the note taker, who she thinks is the police. I provide context for my quote. Then, in the text, the note taker says, there, who's hurting you, silly girl? I provide my quote. And then I say, by calling the flower girl a silly girl, the note taker is speaking down to her. I provide analysis. So I'm going to pause there. That was a lot of modeling at once. I'm going to give people an opportunity. Isis, I'm glad that makes sense. Jaylene, you're good. So I'm going to pause. We've only got 7 minutes left. If this was helpful for you and you are now good, you understand thematic topics, and you understand quote sandwiches, you're good to go. For those of you who are still struggling with one of these topics, please write, I need more help, or if you have a specific question, write that in, and then we can talk for the next 7 minutes and make sure that you feel more comfortable. Bye, Celise. So specifically, Richard and Sadia, was that example helpful? You can both unmute. I want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah, it was helpful.
Yes, good. I'm glad. Jalissa, can you unmute? What's going on? What are you confused by?
So wait, that was the thing that we did yesterday? I mean, not yesterday, the day before. We
2
had
days
the.
ago, yeah.
So, like, I was confused, like, if we, what happens if, like, we put it in, like, the, like, in a response, but, like, we don't explain it more? We still don't get points for that?
If you put what in the response? If you just put the theme?
Yeah, if you just put the theme and the evidence doesn't connect, like, what we're saying.
You can
like,
only get 1 point.
Oh.
Because if you have a theme but you can't support it, then I don't know that you actually understand what your theme is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if I do like so if I redo it and I use the same theme but different evidence, can I still get points?
Yes.
Can I still get points or no?
Yes.
Okay.
You just got to make sure your evidence aligns.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Asias, do you want to type in if you have a question? Edward, if you want to type in a question, or you can unmute and you can ask your question. Bye, Aiden. Bye, Isis. Edward. Okay, so the whole point of the quote sandwich is just adding a sentence before the quote that explains where the quote is coming from. So, quote intro equals tell us what is happening at the part you are about to quote. Does that make sense, Edward? So, Asias, the introduction of the quote sandwich. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So when I wrote that other sentence, it was really me just trying to get some concept of how to answer the question. Sometimes I do that, and you don't have to keep that first sentence if it doesn't really say anything useful. This first sentence is answering the question. So I have to provide my theme, right? My thematic statement. And then I have to answer the question. It's clearly shown through Act 1 of Pygmalion. So remember, this thematic statement, because I'm talking about how they speak, it fits under that bucket of culture. Asias, does that make more sense? And if not, if you've got a specific question. Okay, good. So Richard, do you want to unmute and we can talk about what you find confusing? Bye, Asias. Have a good day. And Glorielle, do you have a question? Edward, do you need additional help? Okay, so then go on to social studies. You've got 2 minutes to get there. Richard, what's going on, my dude? Richard, unmute, babe.